Welcome to Cabbage Tree Basin Virtual Tour. Tour route. The red marking on the satellite map shows us the route of a bushwalk around the Cabbage Tree Basin. The bushwalk starts at the Bonnievale entrance, from which it leads into the Bonnievale picnic area. Point 1 marked on the red line is where the bush track to the Cabbage Tree Basin continues. This track consists of fauna including a wide range of vegetation and foliage such as the cabbage palm and grass tree. This is a great visiting route for those who are interested in exploring the different types of fauna in Australia. A little further up ahead of Point 1 is a metal bridge which also supports the town's main water pipeline. To the south of this bridge, the Cabbage Tree Basin can be clearly viewed, and to the north the bridge looks over towards mangroves. A variety of birds including pelicans, the white-faced heron, and the egret are commonly spotted in the Cabbage Tree Basin and seen near its wetlands and in its mangroves too. Approximately 50 meters ahead from the metal bridge is a bush track towards the south, which follows the outline of the basin. If we continue a kilometer on this track, it'll lead us to a cliff outcrop. Fun fact: Cabbage Tree Basin was the first site for Australia's fish hatchery, established in 1900. It had many fish pens and included native fish and also introduced species. In just 1 year, the hatchery contained lobsters, herrings, snappers, oysters, and many more. However, a mysterious epidemic in 1914 resulted in the death of all the fish in the basin. Because of this, the hatchery closed down. Here we can note that the epidemic was a selection pressure which challenged the survival of the fish in the hatchery. Continuing southward, there is a river crossing from which a kilometer going northeast we come across an Aboriginal midden. Continuing in this northerly direction, we'll be taken to this thick array of mangroves. This path goes on to ultimately take us back to where we started. These directions for the tour route are reliable as many people have visited these areas. Technology today allows us to even view the path via Google Maps, which gives us an accurate and valid perspective and image of its environment. Now I'll be exploring 4 different types of organisms which can be found in the Cabbage Tree Basin, and I'll be discussing their adaptations to their environment, selection pressures, and also investigating evolutionary changes in the organisms. Mangroves. Of the recognized 110 species of mangrove, many of these species have found and adapted similar solutions to abiotic factors such as water salinity and sunlight intensity, demonstrating a convergent evolutionary pattern. There are 2 hypotheses about how the mangroves spread across the world and evolved. The center of origin hypothesis suggests that mangroves originated in the Indo-West Pacific and then dispersed to other parts of the world, and have become adapted to each of its own specific surroundings. The vicariance hypothesis asserts that mangroves evolved around the Tethys Sea around 100 to 66 million years ago, and regional diversity was a result of diversification in the plant after continental drift. Though these hypotheses have been supported by evidence by researchers, there is no clear data or specification about the actual origination of the mangrove. Therefore, either hypothesis can be false. A structural adaptation of mangroves is their densely tangled roots, which makes them seem as though they are standing above water. This feature helps them to maintain and slow the movement of tidal waters, which allows sediments in the water to settle down at the bottom, creating a muddy base. This base helps keep the mangrove steady and stable in the water. Another structural adaptation is their laterally spread roots, which are attached with vertical anchor roots to maintain a steady base. A physiological adaptation of the mangrove is its ability to secrete excess salt from brackish estuarine waters through special glands in its leaves by a process which leaves salt crystals on the leaves' upper surface. Another physiological adaptation is their aerial roots, called pneumatophores, that take up oxygen from the air for the roots since the soil in shallow areas are normally flooded during high tides. This adaptation has mainly come to be due to the abiotic factors of soil salinity, water salinity, and availability of nutrients acting as selection pressures on the mangroves. In other words, the extreme salinity of the waters have caused mangroves to adapt to this environment in a way in which it will help boost its chances of survival. A behavioral adaptation of the mangrove is its reaction to destructive impact of tides, waves, and storms by growing stilt roots which extend from the trunk to keep it steady. Pelicans. Researchers from France have uncovered the fossil of a beak of the earliest known pelican, and what's surprising is that it's almost identical to the modern species. In the early Oligocene, the fish were of similar shape and size to the prey of the modern-day pelican. This suggests that pelicans quickly evolved their huge beaks and have maintained them almost unchanged since, because they are optimal for feeding. Because there is data available for comparison, we can make an informed conclusion that indeed the pelican has not drastically evolved from its ancestors. A structural adaptation of the pelican is its large bill. This allows the pelican to catch its prey, most commonly fish, in its bill and carry it back to their babies. A physiological adaptation of the pelican is its ability to produce a type of waterproofing oil on its feathers by the uropegial gland at the base of the tail feathers. This repels water, so when they're diving and swimming, they can still be dry enough to be able to fly. A behavioral adaptation pelicans have is the action of drowning their prey before consuming. They do this so they can enjoy their meal in peace without having to worry about their prey escaping from their clutch. Herons. Analysis of the skeleton, mainly the skull, suggested that the heron could be split into a diurnal and a nocturnal group. But from DNA studies and skeletal analysis focusing more on bones of bodies and limbs, this grouping has been revealed as incorrect. Rather, the similarities in skull morphology reflect convergent evolution to cope with the different challenges of both daytime and nighttime feeding. Today, it is believed that 3 major groups can be distinguished, which are, from the most primitive to the most advanced, tiger herons and the boatbill, bitterns, day herons and egrets, and night herons. Just comparing the physical structure of the skull may allow a researcher to hypothesize and draw predictions about the taxonomy and evolution of the heron, but it does not confirm anything. However, the reliability and accuracy of this scientific data and DNA studies are high due to the fact that nowadays we have advanced technology to allow extensive and precise research. A structural adaptation of the heron is its sharp pointed bill, which helps it spear fish in the water whilst hunting. Another observable adaptation is its long legs, which help it to stand above the water and have a wide view of the fish around them, so it's much easier to target. A physiological adaptation of herons is the process of growing special feathers that disintegrate into a powder that they use to waterproof their feathers. This also helps to maintain a warm inner layer underneath their feathers. A behavioral adaptation of the heron is their reaction to changing seasons. When winter approaches, the number of feathers on their body slightly increases to keep them warm. This is also due to the fact that they are a migratory species. Here, the selection pressure which drives this adaptation is the temperature and weather conditions. Since both herons and pelicans are birds, they have similar selection pressures. Competition for food drives the birds to hunt for fish in different ways in which it will favor them. The aquatic environment is another selection pressure for both birds since they are both semi-aquatic. This has resulted in them being able to waterproof their bodies whilst hunting in the water. Grass tree. It is a common misconception that grass tree are an ancient group, but it seems in fact that they are a recent, rapidly evolving genus. This information was found on a website in the style of a journal, and there was no evidence to support this, hence suggesting that this may not be an accurate and reliable source. Many other websites and articles did not specify and detail much about the evolution history of the grass tree, so it is difficult to draw conclusions regarding their evolution. Adaptations. A structural adaptation of the grass tree is its long and thin leaves, which helps to reduce water loss during transpiration. Abiotic factors such as dryness, sunlight, and temperature act as selection pressures for this plant to adapt in a way to best preserve its water. The selection pressure of predation has resulted in a physiological adaptation of the grass tree to produce leaves which are toxic. A behavioral adaptation of the grass tree is its ability to take advantage of soil fertilized with ash after a bushfire. Another adaptation it has is its response to fire by shedding and clearing away its dead leaves, which then promotes flowering.